Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Wyoming Women's Business Center 2020 webinar series. Today's presentation is Expert Insights on Copywriting and Editing. I'm Veronica Donahue from our COVID-19 support program, and I'll be your speaker today. Now, just to clarify, this video is being recorded, so we will be sending out a recording to all registered attendees for this event. You will notice the GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. I want to call attention to both the questions panel and the chat box. If you have any comments or questions during the webinar today, I'd like you to use that chat box within the questions panel to communicate with us. We will be taking questions at the end as part of this panel series, so go ahead and type in those questions whenever they come up. Immediately following this presentation, a survey will launch. I do ask that you please complete this survey as it provides us with valuable information. We do read all of your responses and pass this information along to our funding partners. We love to see your feedback, so please remember to fill out this event survey. Okay, so we're going to start with some quick information about the Wyoming Women's Business Center before we introduce our panelists. And of course, there will be some time at the end for questions. As a reminder, all participants are muted to minimize background noise. So once again, if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, feel free to type them into that chat box or questions panel. The Wyoming Women's Business Center is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to enable and empower Wyoming entrepreneurs, with a special emphasis on women who are economically or socially disadvantaged. We do this through 4 distinct programs. The first is our business training and counseling program, which is always free. The second is access to capital through the microloan programs, which offer microloans and individual development accounts. And the third is the Professional Artist Development Center we run in conjunction with our Works of Wyoming store and Art Connect Gallery in downtown Laramie. And last but not least is our COVID-19 support program. This webinar is brought to you by the COVID-19 support program, which was launched in early June. If you would like more information on the services available through the program, you can contact me using my email at the bottom of the screen or visit our website at wyomingwomen.org/COVID-19-support. All right, to get started, I just want to introduce our 4 panelists, and the first one is Melissa Ross from Narketing. Melissa, will you turn on your webcam and give a quick introduction?
Hi, everybody. My name's Melissa Ross with Narketing. I'm a website designer, a marketing specialist, and a serial entrepreneur. And I've been in marketing for about 12 years now. I have a lot of background working with outdoor and cycling brands in both national and global markets, but I'm really passionate about helping small businesses who have tight marketing budgets on their marketing strategies. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. All right, perfect. And our next presenter or panelist is Erin Bentley. Erin, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Erin Bentley. I am currently a grad student in botany at the University of Wyoming. During my undergrad here, I was at first a student intern and then a professional consultant at the Writing Center. So most of my background and area of expertise is specifically in wordsmithing and content creation. I have a lot of experience with working with scientific or jargony content to make it accessible to a lay viewer. And that's really where most of my skills lie.
Awesome. It's great to have you here, Erin. All right, our next panelist is Elizabeth Dillow from Cheyenne. Elizabeth, do you want to give a quick intro?
Sure. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Dillow, and I live in Cheyenne. I own a one-woman shop that I work with primarily nonprofits and small businesses on content, design, and photography. I work really hard to help businesses and nonprofits translate their mission into stories that make an impact on people to get noticed and have actually an interaction and a relationship between the people they're trying to reach and that organization. And I'm excited to talk to you today.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And our next and last panelist, last but not least, is Tommy Russell from True North Media in Casper. Hi, Tommy.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Tommy Russell. I'm from Casper, Wyoming, and I lead a group of creative professionals to develop advertising and marketing strategy at True North Media, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I am so happy to have all of you here. Thank you for, providing your expertise. That's really great. So I have a couple questions prepared, and I want to ask all our presenters to turn on their webcams. And I'll just kind of go off of these and call you out by name. But of course, if you want to add in and I don't call on you, just put your hand up or something like that. The first question here, we kind of ask this in all of our panel webinars, and it's when a small business contacts you for copywriting and editing, what is a common request and why do they need a professional? So I'm going to start with you, Tommy. What's the common request you get?
Yeah, a common request that we get is just helping tell the service or product that someone offers. And typically, what a client doesn't really know is that needs to come back to a story. So we're helping them identify what the story might be, not only for them, but for their client and how they fit into that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen that you do a lot of storytelling work. Melissa, do you have anything to add? Maybe a common request you get?
A common request I get is for building a new website. It's usually a startup business, and oftentimes they don't really know what they need. So we talk about their goals and who they're trying to reach, and we come up with a plan.
Okay. I think that's pretty true. You know, a business starting out maybe doesn't have it all figured out. Elizabeth, do you have any common requests that you get?
I would say similar to what Melissa said, I get a lot of questions and reaching out about people who just don't really know where to start. And so one of the things that I try really hard to do as a first step with new clients is to distill their message from all the things that they're excited about into something they could use, what's called an elevator pitch, where you can kind of summarize what you do in the time it would take to go from first floor to sixth floor or something like that with a stranger. And being able to do that is really the first step to understanding how you can branch off from key points of that mission. That's very small distilled statement, but it's a lot easier to start small and then grow as opposed to try to overwhelm people with all sorts of information. And so we work really hard on trying to make sure that people understand that very simple mission first and then build from there.
Okay, I love that. I think sometimes entrepreneurs have so many ideas floating around that they kind of need that help to order it and simplify it and really make it concise. Cool. All right, Erin, do you have any common requests that you get? I know you're in a little bit of a different field of copywriting.
Yeah, I tend to get a lot of questions focused on like structure and wordsmithing of content. A lot of times they need help reaching their audience. For instance, having a really, really jargony website and knowing that you need to tone it back, but not knowing how to do it. And that's, I think, a pretty common thing because a lot of people that are in these very specific fields don't realize that what they're saying doesn't make sense to the average person that is coming to their website. So I tend to get a lot of questions specifically with either making things more accessible or editing tone and style to fit the vibe that people want to put out on their website.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm curious now, what should clients think about or what should they have prepared before contacting a copywriter or editor? And I'll start with you, Tommy, again. Do you have any advice for this?
Yeah, absolutely. When a small business owner comes to us and we're first starting that conversation, one of the best things that they can have for us is, who is your target audience? And it's easy to say anybody that wants to buy, but at the end of the day, we need to get more specific than that. We need to have some demographics and some psychographic information to really know who we're talking to. And then also the second biggest thing for us is, what problem are you helping those people solve? And once you've kind of started to think about those two things, then we can really help shape your message and speak to that right target demographic.
Okay, yeah, I've heard this as kind of like the golden rule of marketing: know your customer. And the more research and the more content you have directed at your target customer, I think the better. And try and make it specific, right? Try and be as specific as possible. All right, Elizabeth, do you have any advice for what people should prepare before talking to you?
Yes, what I love most is when someone comes prepared with information that they want to share with me so that I can understand what they do better. It's really hard to do work for people when you don't know the industry. And a lot of the times, all four of us, I think, would agree that we help clients that we aren't trained in whatever they're experts at. And so I like it when people come with, maybe 3 or 4 articles, or like they take on the teacher role and try to educate me so that I can understand the nature of what they do, the issues that are most important, kind of the tone and the style of what it is they're doing, so that I know what that's important to them and I know a little bit about their industry, so that I can make good use of their time and be really efficient with our plan, whatever that plan ends up being. So whether it's trona mining or literacy or any number of things in between, I like to know a little bit more about it. So coming prepared with those types of things is really helpful.
Okay. Yeah, it's always good to have a little content ready that you really like and you really like the way it's set up. Examples are always good. Melissa, do you have any preparation tips?
I think it's good to know what your mission statement is, what your core values are, and then like what was already mentioned, some examples. And I like to see examples of other businesses that you kind of strive to be more like, I guess. And that helps set a tone of what your website could look like. Also, a little more information about your field and who you really want to attract. Like, are you trying to attract a certain type of customer? And those things are very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I think mission statements are often looked past, but they're really a great way to kind of create a statement that's going to last for years to come. And if you can come up with that, it's so informative, especially for a copywriter. Erin, do you have any preparation tips?
Yeah, in addition to kind of what's already been said about your audience and coming with examples, it's especially important in the work that I do with wordsmithing and that kind of thing to come with like the vibe or the voice that you want your business to have, or even just some examples like, okay, I'm a wood, like I work in like a wood shop and I make these things and I want to really hammer home like the artistic side of this. Having some examples where you can be like, I want my writing on the website to sound like this is then helpful if you like come to me with content that you want reworded or you want me to create the content. Either way, having those examples of the voice that you want is really helpful.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of thinking about back to my English classes with purpose, tone, and audience. Like all of those things always come up with writing, and sometimes we're not as good at doing it as a professional is. So my next question, and this is probably more geared towards those of you who do websites and website copy. Can you talk a little bit about SEO and why it's important to think about when you're building out that text for your website? So I'm going to start with you, Elizabeth. What is SEO and why should you think about it?
Thanks. SEO is search engine optimization, and it's basically the way people looking for you find you. That's the easiest way to put it, I'd say. And I like to think about it as when I'm searching for something, what am I using as a key term? Am I trying to find a new place to go get my hair cut, or am I trying to find a place that offers a certain service I'm looking for? What am I going to put in as search terms? Most website platforms have that built-in integrated right now so that you can change it, you can put in keywords, but you want to have those keywords show up obviously in your website so that people can put them in, and then Google or whatever finds those things and matches you with what you're looking for, what matches the searcher for what they're looking for. But it's also really important to have dynamic content, not have a website that's just stale and doesn't ever change. And that helps by having a blog or having content that updates and not having old stuff on your website. And so those are some of the things that it's good to think about ahead of time, what kind of time do you have to manage new content, because you want to keep it fresh so that people that are searching for you, your results will come closer to the top.
Okay. Yeah, I think that blog idea, everyone recommends doing a blog, but sometimes it's something that entrepreneurs can't do on the regular. Melissa, do you have any tips for this, for either SEO copy or tips for how to keep your SEO good when you don't have very much time?
I think you need to try to make some time to change things up a little bit on your site, and the blogging is helpful, and you don't need to write a huge article to update blog content. Just, it could be short and sweet and to the point, but it's another way to also show your expertise in your field and educate your customer. And it's another way you can add content that you can share on social media and direct people back to your website. So I think it's a good tool that you need to carve out just a little bit of time to regularly add some small pieces if you can. So keep it short, don't overwhelm yourself.
Okay.
Can I jump in really quick and add on to something Melissa said? And that is, it's great to have your content on your own website and then push it out to social media versus having your content start on Facebook and then it gets just overwhelmingly lost there. I'm working with a client right now who's really good at sharing content, but puts it up on Facebook and then it's really hard to find. And then Facebook sometimes changes its algorithm and it's really difficult. So if you keep your content on your own website and push it out that way, you have a lot more opportunities for people to find it and have it be useful.
Right. I like that idea because it just seems a little more professional to have, a cohesive website where you can find everything you want to see, versus, scrolling through Facebook pages looking for, some type of information. Tommy, do you have any advice for this? Just SEO in general?
Yeah, so it's really important to have a list of key terms. So when you're writing copy and you're thinking of how people are searching for you as an organization, what words are they going to be looking for? And sometimes, kind of going back to our earlier conversation, sometimes that can be too heavy in jargon. You need to think of the problem that you're helping them solve and have search terms associated with that. So having a bank of key terms that you can use through your copywriting, your posts, and on your website is a really good tool. And one additional thing that I would recommend is don't overcomplicate it. Think of the question that you might ask Alexa, and how would you phrase that? And then put yourself in your customer's shoes and phrase the question that way. That's kind of just a little bit of a tip to help not make it too complex for a search engine or for your customer.
Right. I like that. I mean, I always feel like I Google questions mostly. So if you have any questions that point to your product or service, you should definitely think about those and think about the keywords that you use in those questions. This is great advice. So the next question I have is actually some scenarios that I want to throw at you guys. And I just want to give each of you one of them and ask that you give some examples of what type of content you're thinking they could expect. And also a couple example call to actions or ideas for how to drive that business. So the first one is a mental health counselor who maybe is switching to meeting with people online. Maybe they don't really know how to reach out to new customers online, and it's like a whole different ballgame right now. And I want to give this one to Elizabeth. And I'm just curious, what ideas do you have for a mental health counselor and a couple of call to actions?
Okay, well, I think it's really important to focus first and foremost on voice when you are dealing with some sort of mental health or some sort of healthcare services, because you want people to feel like you are welcoming and inviting, and you also wanted to make sure that people aren't searching for information. It's really important to think about keeping things simple, and I think that holds true for just about any website, but especially for mental health, where people might be in crisis themselves or looking for somebody to help that they are close to, a family member or a friend. They don't have time or the energy to have to dig through things, and they want to find something that feels immediately welcoming. And so having information that would be very easy to find, like phone numbers or a suicide prevention hotline or something like that, that either is at the top or pops up right away so that people can see that there's immediate help, but then also having very simple, welcoming, here's what we can do, please call, or something, just so that you don't scare people away. And it's very hard when you're working in a mental health care field to be a good fit for everybody. And so I think having some sort of welcoming language that says something to the effect of, if I'm not the right fit, I can help refer you to other resources, is a great way to show that you are a professional, that you mean to help people, that you're not just in it for, the money or whatever it is that might be a concern, that you actually want to show that you would help. Even if it's not you that's doing the helping, you can at least refer them to other services where they might find a better fit. But I would say the most important thing is to keep it simple and welcoming.
I love that. I love kind of going off of that voice idea, because I think that personality of the specific counselor might have a lot to do with it. Different counselors are different, and obviously it's very personal. So you like your counselor, and it would be great to include their voice and what they really believe in. So I really like that take on it. So the next scenario is an e-commerce women's store. So this is maybe they're selling accessories and clothing, and they, aren't that great at marketing, and they don't really know what to say. And I'm going to throw this one at Erin, and I'm just curious, what ideas you have for the content you could provide. Oh, it looks like you're muted still.
For a clothing store specifically, I think, you're going to want examples of what your outfits look like. So I think that here you're really going to want to put forward almost like a finalized version of what you can provide them. So in this case, your main sell are these clothes. So you should be putting that as your first thing forward. With this kind of like an e-commerce women's clothing store, I think that you worry a little bit less about things like blogs and more about like what's your twist. There's a lot of women's clothing stores online right now. There's hundreds. Why should I be shopping at yours? Do you have specific materials? Do you have specific like an edge? And how can you highlight that, right? So you need like a hook that can bring people into your clothing store specifically, and then you display these outfits to show like, look, this is what I can provide you. And I think that that's going to be kind of your biggest and best way to go forward with that specific platform. Okay.
Yeah, I know that one's a little hard because it's such a visual marketing space. There's just so many pictures, and that's what draws people in. So the next scenario I have is for Melissa, and it's going to be an at-home daycare. Maybe they lost a couple of their clients, and they're hoping to gain some new ones and share what they're all about online. Do you have any advice for them?
I think for this one, you really want to put yourself in the shoes of the parent and think about the emotions they might be going through. Really emphasize your core values and show bios and information, qualifications of all the staff who will be working with your kids. Paint a picture what the schedule looks like, what will they typically be doing all day, when will they have lunch, snacks, naps, those sort of things. And also think of things like what a parent might be worried about or concerned about. Is it a safe environment? Is the staff qualified? Is it age-appropriate learning? Are the kids having fun? And give the parents peace of mind by looking through it. I think it's helpful to have testimonials from parents who, used your services and put those throughout your website. And then your call to action could be, schedule a visit with us. Come come see us in action. And that might be something that's available if you did have openings. I know in Laramie it's probably hit or miss right now. But yeah, think about your parents and what they're going through.
Awesome. I kind of heard you talk about emotion and kind of, obviously for a daycare, you want people to be at peace with their decision. You want them to be happy with where they're sending their kids. But I think this is kind of a big piece in the copy part of it, because you can stir emotions with the words you pick. So I really like that idea of thinking about the emotion that you want the reader to feel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say to tell a story to help show those emotions. Give an example of what the situation might be for that person. That might be a way you can help show those emotions.
I love that. I think storytelling is a big topic for copywriters. Maybe a story about a little boy who goes to daycare and he finally comes out of his shell, because we're such an open and welcoming place, right? Okay, so the last scenario is a personal trainer who maybe also lost a couple clients recently, and they're trying to go online. They're trying to reach out and build up their base. Tommy, do you have any examples of what kind of content you could provide them, and maybe some call to actions?
Yeah, so I might sound like a little bit of a broken record, so I apologize. But one of the things that you really need to consider is that your content and your communication channel match your target audience. Just as an example of that, if you are trying to meet young women between 18 and 29 for your target demographic, and you are just sending tweets on Twitter, probably not the best place to live, just based on what the demographic of that channel is. That'll also help you guide your voice and how you're talking to your clientele. So when you're looking at a personal trainer specifically, some of the ideas that you might consider are having a Facebook group or an email marketing system, or sending text messages, kind of the shorter message system, and really providing value time and time again. It kind of goes back to a Gary Vaynerchuk method of jab, 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 right hook. What can you provide to your clients time and time again to build that trust? So you might be sending out a workout that they can do at home and don't need any gym equipment to do. So a workout of the day. Or you might be doing a healthy meal tip. And a lot of times for a personal trainer, you're probably already doing these things. So you don't need to overcomplicate it or overwhelm yourself with, man, I have to make up this whole cookbook of all of these recipes. It can literally be what you are eating. You're probably already setting the example of healthy eating in that. So writing specifically to what you're doing in your daily life would be a good step. This one's a little bit more challenging in the call to action, because the call to action can't be very specific to one individual, because with health goals, they're specific to that individual. So you want to make sure that you have a short, concise call to action, but it's not just broadly addressing a larger audience when it doesn't really resonate with that person. So I would recommend saying a call to action that's start today or get fit, because fit can be defined by the individual rather than lose weight, which might not be everyone's goal. So just some general tips for personal training.
Okay, I really like your ideas of that, like subtle marketing of just being active online and, being available, showing people that you're still there. And it's kind of like relationship building. And I know our social media counselor does talk about this quite a bit. But I love that, because it's showing, this is my expertise, this is what my passion is, and I want to be available to you whether you're paying me or not. I just want to share healthy tips. So I really like that.
Right.
So the next question, I think it makes sense for me because I'm not that familiar with marketing writing, and I'm not very good at it. So can you talk a little bit about writing for marketing specifically, and writing for marketing purposes like brochures and online marketing posts and blog posts and print marketing? Do you have any tips or examples of how this can really help if you hire a professional who really knows what they're doing? How has this helped them? And I want to start with you, Tommy, because I do think you had a good example when we practiced.
You might have to remind me of what that example is. But I do have some things that you should probably consider, and the biggest one would be two that we've already discussed, which are tell a story and make sure that you're simplifying. Erin mentioned earlier the amount of industry jargon that we introduce when we're talking about what we do, and the four of us are probably just as guilty as any other business owner, where we use that industry jargon a lot. Simplify that, break it down so it's understandable and it can be digested by your clientele. But then a simple equation that we use is the problem that you solve and how the person can start or take action should be developing or equals your primary message.
Okay. Yeah, I think that might be hard for some people to kind of wrap their head around, especially that what problem are we solving? Because really you say I solve 8 different problems and here they are, when maybe half of those problems don't apply to most people, and it's easy to get caught up with, all the words that you could possibly give to someone. And that's kind of why we hire a professional, right? If we can't get it all lined up, sometimes it's better to have someone outside look in and figure it all out for you. Melissa, do you have any examples of marketing writing or any tips to give anyone?
Another tip I think that people forget about is showing their value, showing how you're providing value with your service or your product. Don't discount what you're doing. They're coming to you for a reason. And like Tommy said, showing the problem that you're trying to help solve is important. They don't really necessarily need to know how they get there, depending on what sort of business or service you're providing. They want to know that you can help them, and you're genuinely going to be there. The other part is having a lot of social proof is helpful, because the testimonials can help tell those other stories on how working with you has been a positive experience, and usually gets that person over that trust barrier where they can trust that that working with you will provide those solutions.
Right. I like to think of testimonials as kind of, you're always searching for someone who's in similar shoes. You aren't looking for someone who can get every service ever and they just pick this one. You're looking for someone who's, has the same wants, needs, and worries as you. So good advice there. Elizabeth, do you have any examples of how marketing writing has really helped a company, or tips?
Sure. I think it's really helpful to have kind of a list of talking points, things that summarize what you're doing, that you can adjust and adapt for different situations. And what I mean is, it's not just big paragraphs that support your writing out in the world. So you might have, your value that you're providing or the problem that you're solving, and it might show up in a long paragraph, or it might show up in a single sentence. And having different ways to support that with visual images, or like a short social media post, or an actual longer bulleted list or something like that. There's lots of ways to deliver that message. An example would be one of the things that we say, I write for Wyoming Hunger Initiative, and one of our big sentences that we use a lot is finding Wyoming solutions to Wyoming challenges. And that kind of summarizes everything that that organization is about, but then there's lots of ways to support that. We can talk about it, write about it. We can show a picture that has a caption that supports that. So it's the same message is being delivered in multiple ways. Writing doesn't always have to be, a long paragraph. It can be short and sweet. And you can kind of swap out the ways in which you're delivering that message, so that people don't get tired of it. That's why pictures, and I know this is about writing, but you can also write captions, and that's another way to really punch that message home to people so that they don't lose interest. There's something new to see that's connected to your message. It just is delivered differently. And so think about the various lengths and delivery methods that you push your solution to the world, and that will keep things fresh as well.
I really like that idea of a list, of kind of simplifying it as much as possible and coming up with your main punch points and the main things you want to get across to your audience. I love that idea. So Erin, I don't know if you're kind of in a different world than the marketing writing, but I don't know if you have any tips or advice or ideas for marketing writing.
Yeah, so I think that this is broadly applicable to almost any kind of writing you do, but it's something that a professional and even just a set of outside eyes can help you do, and that's really identifying your hook. So you might not be able to distill down what you do to the best hook, but someone who's coming in from the outside might be able to be like, this is the most interesting thing that you can offer. Let's use that to build a metaphor. Let's use that to ask a question. Let's use that to really bring people in so that you can then show why they need your services. To go back to the clothing scenario that we talked about in the last question, one of the most effective hooks I've seen so far is the only thing warmer than alpaca fur is polar bear fur. So there you go, there's a hook. And then you follow it with what's essentially a thesis, which is, and that's why you need to buy our alpaca sweaters, right? And that in general is a good thing to have a professional come in and kind of help you figure out that message.
That is so funny. I think that's such a quirky way to capture someone's attention. And I love all the funny, like a Geico commercial where it's a gecko. There's just so many different fun ways to capture the attention. And this kind of goes right into the next question I have. So can you explain what a brand voice is and maybe a process that someone could go through to figure out their brand voice? And I want to start with Tommy. What is a brand voice?
Yeah, so brand voice is a way that you communicate and unifies all of your messages together. So the best example that I can think of is when you have a well-established brand voice, it doesn't matter who is writing for you, they understand the tone that should be communicated in. And even down to some of the specific messaging. I think a good example of that would be like Chick-fil-A's My Pleasure. That's part of their brand voice, and all of their employees know it, and it's part of what they represent. So I think having an established brand voice is really important, especially when you are working with a copywriter, because we want to make sure that we are writing in your voice. So if you are posting or writing and then we provide a piece of content, that to the consumer, they're one and the same. So making sure that that's established from the beginning is really important.
Okay, I really like that. I think it's like that cohesive element of all of your marketing. You want it to all sound like it's the same voice. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add, or maybe some advice for how to find your brand voice?
Sure. I think one of the most important things is to figure out what you want to be like. Do you want to be fun? Do you want to be playful? Do you want to be authoritative? What is it that really speaks to you about how you want to deliver your message? And then write it down on paper so that you can, start to come up with little catchphrases or things that kind of fit within that category. You don't want to necessarily be super serious all the time, and then there's some really weird, out of place, silly thing that pops up, and that's okay to have some silly, but you have to kind of blend it in a little bit. One really good way to figure out what other people are doing to help how you are doing it is to reverse engineer other brands, like famous brands like Nike or like State Farm, or the one that has the guy that's always causing terrible damage, and I can't think of what's the company right now?
I know. Mayhem.
Mayhem. Which one? Which company is it?
It's Allstate.
Allstate, right. Okay, I couldn't think of what it was. That is a really, really great brand to reverse engineer and figure out what is it that they're, when they sat at their table, what did they decide they wanted to do? Now, that might not be for you, but it helps to understand how other people came to the place where they are, where of course, I forgot the company, which doesn't really prove my point, but that was just a momentary lapse. You know exactly who that is when you see that guy, and that commercial. He's going to look the same. He's going to have a voice. There's going to be some sort of terrible disaster happen. That's all part of a brand voice. Might not be for you, but it's really helpful to look at other companies and see how they got to where they are and kind of watch them. And then you can start to develop your own. It's a skill that you can transfer to your own development meetings.
Right. I really think this applies a lot when people are building their website. Like a daycare probably wants to be fun but safe, and they have all these keywords that they want to describe their website with. and it's totally different than a lawyer's website, obviously. So I think kind of finding those keywords for what you want people to think about you or feel about you, it's probably really good advice when building out that brand. Melissa, do you have any advice about brand voice and how to find it?
I think it also comes down to, you know, what type of customers you want to work with. For instance, say you're a chiropractor and you could specialize in people who've been injured in car accidents. That's going to be very different than somebody who works with sports injuries and specializes in someone who's just had surgery. So the voice will be a little bit different in how you would approach it. And the other thing is thinking of your business long term. Oftentimes when you're starting out, it could be just one person in your business, and you might often make your brand voice yourself, and that's okay. But if your long-term goal is to build a business where you kind of step out of the picture, or your business becomes the, you know, more upfront, somebody else is going to be putting that voice out there, and you want to think of, are you wanting your business to be that voice, or do you want it to be yourself as an individual? And those are two different goals to have. And then I think the other thing is highlighting your expertise is important. So what sort of niche do you have that is a little bit different than somebody else? What sets you apart? How do you stand out? Instead of just, you know, kind of fitting into the crowd. What can make you stand out as a business?
I really like that. It always comes back to your target market and understanding who they are and what drives them to buy something. Of course, knowing your target market is probably the best piece of advice from all of these panel webinars. But I really like that last part as well. Erin, do you have any brand voice advice?
Yeah, so I think that the best way to find your own brand voice is, again, like we said, I think for this question and for several of the other questions, is to do your research and do your reading. So finding brands that you like and really dissecting what they've done so that you can be like, the reason why I like them is because of this, right? So it might not be as simple as I like them because they're silly. It might be I like them because they use their silliness in this structure. And so that kind of feeds into voice in most forms of writing really benefit from two things. And it's mostly composed of these two things, and that's tone and style or structure. Those two, you know, you can kind of interchange. So tone is going to be the general feeling of your content, and the style and structure is how you organize it. And the combination of those two things, and if you can map out those two things, it's really going to help you convey your personality consistently. And then, like Melissa was saying, if someone's going to step into this role for you, having those two things really ironed out will help them do that seamlessly.
Okay, I really like that you brought up structure because I think that plays a lot into the voice as well. You know, some voices are really snappy, short, and sweet, and then some are long, beautiful sentences that are, you know, take forever to read. So it's kind of cool how these writing elements that you learn in school really come out in the real world. So that was my last question, but I do have a couple questions that came in from the audience, and I do want to say, if you have questions, now's the time to type them in. So this first question I have is probably geared towards Erin. It says, how do you communicate a scientific approach and knowledge in the field without overwhelming potential clients with jargon? So this is definitely something that we've talked about before in other circumstances, Erin. So do you have any quick advice for this?
Yeah, so for this specifically, again, your target audience is going to be important, because if you're pitching a scientific concept to a completely lay person, you're really going to want to either define the words as you use them, which can get kind of wordy on a website, but will be important for comprehension. Whereas if you're pitching it to somebody who's like in the same field, but isn't you know, where you're at. Like if you're an expert and they want to buy what you're doing and they know like roughly how it fits into what they're going to do, then it's okay to use a little bit more of this jargon. A lot of the time it's kind of hard to find a workaround, and it's kind of hard to find a balance, but it can be helpful to bring in an outside reader and be like, do you know what this says? Can you understand what this says? Whether that's a professional or not, bringing in somebody else to take a look at what you've done is really helpful.
Yeah, I really like that advice. I think that might be good for every type of writing you do. Just, bring it to your sister or your neighbor and say, what do you think about this? What, is there anything that stands out to you that's really great or really bad about it? The more eyes, the better, in my opinion. So the next question is pretty much the same as that one, but I have my own question for you guys. So I know there's like a term of grammar Nazi, and you probably all have a little bit of a tendency to have things that you hate. For example, I was in a writing class a few years ago, and the teacher like grilled me about using the word utilize instead of use, because he said that's just overused. So do you guys have any nitpicks that you want to point out today, or just things that you would avoid? All right, Elizabeth, go for it.
I have a list, but I'll just share one. You kind of busted me. So it is time to retire 2 spaces after a period when you're writing. I have a client who I adore, who I've worked with for a really long time, who's really good at developing content and letting me shape it for her. And I finally said, for the love of God, please stop putting 2 spaces, because I have to go through and fix it all. And so little stuff like that, that's kind of something that even I think Microsoft Word came out with a press release, or Microsoft came out with a press release that said, it's okay, we don't do this anymore, because a lot of people still think that they can do that and it's okay. But especially on a website, it just doesn't look good when you're writing. It kind of distracts people, and like even if you don't realize you're being distracted by little space things like that, they can kind of distract your brain from concentrating. So that would be one thing.
That's kind of the thing with the lip things. Like I feel like people do ... all the time. Like if you use that more than once in a paragraph, you should rethink it, right? Erin, what did you have to share?
So as far as a lot of the like grammar stuff goes, your basic grammar is the most important. So whether or not you use the word use or utilize, the average person isn't going to care. The average person might care if you use the wrong form of there. Mm-hmm. Right? So really, when it comes to this kind of grammar thing, and this is a little bit subjective as to like what field you're in, but largely what's going to be important is that you have your grammar basics, and then from there, most readers aren't going to get super hung up on a lot of it unless it's atrocious. Like if you have like a run-on sentence that goes on for like 20 lines, But again, all of that falls under, can you do your basic grammar and can you identify it? So knowing that is going to be key to that kind of thing.
Right, and there is a free program that can help, which is Grammarly. I use Grammarly. I'm sure a lot of people use Grammarly because it's free, and you can use it to find those mistakes before you send your email or before you publish a document. Melissa, do you have any things that you don't like to see, or maybe things that you really like to see?
I really like to see people keeping things really professional. One thing I really don't like is a lot of emojis. I think sometimes people get emoji happy, and I just think it needs to stay professional, especially based on what type of business or services you're offering.
Right, and I think that's the same thing. It goes back to target audience. Maybe you're selling, tickets to a fun amusement park for teenagers and kids. Like then maybe an emoji is totally fine. But, if you're a mental health counselor and you're, filling your Instagram posts up with emojis, maybe that might not come off right. Tommy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is that I know that it can be difficult for people to write in a different tone than which they speak. And so a lot of people, when we get work from them, it's just like they would speak and they were telling the story. And we often don't speak in perfect grammar. And so I understand that that's a challenge. And don't let that beat you down from editing and working through the proofreading process to make sure that what's your written word is grammatically accurate.
Right.
I would love to add on to what Tommy said there, and also it goes the other way around too. Like when you need to read out loud what you've written, because I think you can catch all sorts of weird things that you might be trying to have, some sort of formal grammar, and it goes too far on the spectrum, where you don't want it to be so conversational that it, like what Tommy said, it's too much like we would speak, but you also don't want to go so far that it sounds strange. So I really recommend making it larger, like enlarging your type, so you can catch typos. That's one thing. Like I make it 300% when I'm doing a final proofread, but also read it out loud and slowly sometimes, because you can catch all sorts of things that you didn't realize you did. And it's also good to put some space between you and the thing you've written, so that if you're ready to have the final thing published, do it the next morning, take it, or have somebody else look at it as the last step or something, so that you don't go straight from working on it to publishing it. Sometimes that's a good tip if you're feeling stuck. Just let it sit overnight, do it the next morning. Won't be the end of the world if it, or start earlier if you need it to be done by a certain time. That really does help catch a few things too.
Right. I used to read all of my college papers out loud because it really is one of the best ways to catch grammatical errors, spelling errors. Something about just typing it all out at once can really lead to some bad mistakes. Well, I don't have any more questions. Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about today? All right, I think we covered a lot. I think this was very informative. So I wanted to thank you guys. It's really great that you were able to log on and share some great information with our audience. I know I appreciate it, and I think our clients really appreciate it as well. So I'll move on to our closing slides. So the Wyoming Women's Business Center is made possible through several partnership agencies. The center's primary funding comes from the Small Business Administration, or SBA, and the Wyoming Business Council. And we are so thankful for their support and guidance, and we really look forward to the work ahead. All right, so we have several resources for you in terms of counselors, training. If you just want to meet with someone and talk through your ideas, we're always here for that, and we are always here for free. So I do have our business counselors and my contact information if you're interested in the COVID-19 support program. If you enjoy these webinars, we do have several webinars coming up in the new year. Remember to visit our website to register for webinars under training. It's not upcoming events anymore. So, of course, come log into our upcoming webinars. And if you're interested, we do post all of our webinars on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and search Wyoming Women's Business Center. All right, when we close this webinar today, a survey will pop up on your screen or in your browser. It is a quick 5-question survey, and I really am so thankful to read all of your feedback, so please fill that out for us. Thank you for attending, everyone, and I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday.